Catastrophic, that's how the chairman of the United Nations Humanitarian Task Force, Jan Egeland, has described the situation in Syria's second largest city, Aleppo. Overnight strikes on Thursday last week brought full front how badly things have degenerated in the country. Shortly after, the UN Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, called on the United States and Russia to help push lingering peace talks.
Ongoing fighting in Syria took a more deadly turn when violence escalated in the country's second largest city, Aleppo. From amateur video released, one can see the aftermath of shelling and airstrikes there. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says more than 200 people have been killed in airstrikes and shelling over the past week. Although there is a brief truce in some areas, there is no assurance of a truce in combat operations, according to the ceasefire agreement signed since February. All preludes to talks have collapsed, and it has been difficult getting all sides together at a round table. UN Human Rights Chief Zaid Ra'ad al-Hussein said on Friday that all parties have shown a monstrous disregard for civilian lives, and there were deeply disturbing reports of military build-ups indicating preparations for a lethal escalation. Recent airstrikes hit an MSF hospital, killing dozens of people, including doctors and patients. No one has taken responsibility for the violence, but Russia denies its planes carried out the attack, claiming it was a plane from one of the so-called anti-Islamic State coalition countries. 6 days of airstrikes has left scores of people dead in Aleppo. The chairman of the United Nations Humanitarian Task Force, Jan Egeland, described the recent violence as catastrophic.
I could not in any way express how high the stakes are for the next hours and days. The stakes are so incredibly high because so many civilian lives are at stake, so many humanitarian health workers and relief workers are being bombed, killed, maimed at the moment, that the whole lifeline to millions of people is now also at stake.
It said the latest violence in Syria could erase the last 4 months' progress in aid deliveries, wherein more than 50% of people in besieged areas were reached.
The catastrophic deterioration in Aleppo over the last 48 hours, and also in parts of the Homs area, was reported live to the members of the ISSG today. No one doubted the severity of the situation, and now no one is now uncertain about the consequences.
On Friday, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon met with the UN Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, in Geneva.
Thank you. I am lucky.
De Mistura said on Thursday that peace talks had been overshadowed by substantial and worrisome cessation of hostility. He called on the leaders of the United States and Russia to salvage the barely alive 2-month-old ceasefire in Syria and revitalize the damaged peace process. Mr. Ban also urged both countries to exert pressure on Syria's warring parties to stop fighting and ensure a credible investigation of airstrikes that destroyed the hospital in Aleppo. Following Mr. Ban's call, the White House says it is working with Russia to refresh the agreement for a cessation of hostilities in Syria.
It's our view that this essentially would be a refreshment of the cessation of hostilities, and getting both sides to commit to refreshing the commitments that they made in the context of the cessation of hostilities could have potentially a catalyzing effect. And what we would like to see is a return to a situation on the ground that prevailed a couple of weeks ago, which was not an all-out end to the fighting, but rather a broad acceptance of the terms of the cessation of hostilities.
Turning to Ecuador, 659 people killed in the 7.8 magnitude earthquake. A country's authorities are still analyzing how much damage was done and is receiving help from all over the world. We're indeed lucky in this part of the world that we are not prone to natural disasters like that, but that does not take away from how serious this is.
This is what is left of Pedernales, a town hit by a 7.8 magnitude earthquake in northwest Ecuador on April 16. 659 people lost their lives in the quake, 654 of them from Manabí province, the hardest hit area. 26-year-old Luis, who until the quake worked as a lifeguard on the beach, experienced the quake. But he and his mother were saved, all thanks to his expertise. I was at home with my mother. Before the strong tremor, there were slight shakes. My mother asked me what to do if there is an earthquake. I told her if there's an earthquake, we need to hide in a safe place. That is what I learned to survive. Luis now helps every day at the temporary shelter 20 kilometers away and hopes to rebuild his hometown with his own hands. Since the quake, aid has been pouring in from all over the world. President Rafael Correa, assisted by Bolivian leader Evo Morales, worked to facilitate aid efforts. Water and sacks of food were unloaded from a supply plane in Manta for victims of the disaster. Bolivia has sent 80 tons of supply. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos visited the country on Sunday and met with victims of the quake. He traveled with 23 tons of donated humanitarian assistance that included 1,018 kilogram boxes of food, 1,000 hygiene kits, and 3,000 blankets. He also traveled with President Correa to the Manta Naval Base to greet Colombian naval personnel who had traveled there on a ship carrying 75,000 gallons of donated water and 4 tons of supplies. Later at a press conference, he promised continued support from Colombia. It is in the difficult times when true friends show themselves, and the Colombian people and the Ecuadorian people are not only friends, but are brothers. And that is why we are here. In these moments of pain and tragedy, strength is required, looking at the future with optimism and trying to turn the calamities into opportunities. The Colombian military is also facilitating the return of hundreds of the country's citizens who were caught in the quake. Ecuador estimates the earthquake inflicted $2 to $3 billion of damages. This, added to a near-zero growth economy and lower investment, means the country will be needing much more aid. To raise the needed cash, in addition to a $600 million credit from multilateral leaders, the government has imposed a one-off tax of 0.9% on people with wealth over $1 million. People will also have to contribute a day's salary calculated on a sliding scale based on income.
Coming up after the break is our discussion with the Ecuadorian ambassador to Nigeria.